Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 23, Nationalism. And our topic is Gallina's theory of nationalism. Though Galliner theory is not an economic one and A.D. Smith has labeled it as cultural and linguistic, still he maintains that nationalism is the unavoidable outcome of an industrial society which requires a specially ductile labor force. Jaliner does not use the word capitalism and uses instead industrial society. According to him, nationalism can be understood in the context of impact of industrialization, of the competition between classes in the newly created industrial stratification, and of the integrating effects of language and education. The process of industrialization undermined the traditional social cult structures and gave primacy to cultural elements such as communication. The identity of an individual was no longer defined in terms of his social relations, but in terms of his culture, and culture and nationality are closely related. Only the state could provide through an educational system and the official language the kind of cultured person required by the process of industrialization. The fact that industrialization and modernization spread in an uneven fashion created a new system of social stratification, a class system which was felt to be unacceptable because of its illegitimacy. If this overlaps with cultural differences, an uneasy alliance between a culturally displaced intelligentsia and an overexploited proletariat may lead to a nation's succession. According to him, it was the social custom doubles with cultural differences created by early industrialism and by the unevenness of its diffusion, which made the nationalist conflicts acute. Thus, the specific roots of nationalism are found in the distinctive structural requirements of industrial society. The colonial model of nationalist development strongly emphasized that nationalism has its roots in the new industrial order and that nothing before this period, that is, agrarian society, can be equated to nationalism because political units were not defined in terms of cultural boundaries. Since for Gallinier, nations can only be defined in terms of the age of nationalism. He cannot conceive of the nation as an imaginative vision created by intellectuals in order to legitimize the medieval agrarian state monarchy in Western Europe. His other emphasis is on modernization in form of population explosion, rapid urbanization, labor migration, penetration of local economies by a global economy, etc. He also admits that Protestant Reformation must have had an impact on nationalism, as did colonialism and imperialism. Next is political ideological theories. Apart from the economist theories, There are a number of politico-ideological theories of nationalism. The common feature of all these theories is that they give a prominent role to the state in the development of nationalism in modernity. Under these theories, we shall dwell upon the views of four authors, namely John Bowley, Anthony Giddens, Paul Brass, and Michel Mann. John Bowley, in his book Nationalism and State, accepts the existence of nations and nationalist sentiments in medieval Europe, but he restricts nationalism to the modern period and associates it with the development of modern state and of the international state system. Nationalism is understood as a form of politics that arises in close association with the development of the state. In other words, in all its history, the modern state has shaped nationalist politics. Giddens defines nationalism as the existence of symbols and beliefs which are either propagated by the elite group or held by many of the members of regional, ethnic, and linguistic categories of population, and which imply a community between them. Nationalism for Giddens is a modern phenomenon stemming from the aftermath of the French Revolution. He also insisted that the European nationalism is a category of its own and that it should not be generalized to other areas without reference to what he calls world time. Nationalism was a response to certain needs and dispositions which would appear at a time when, as a result of the mass commodification of time and space, the individual lost his ontological security. Simultaneously, he also agrees that nationalism is connected with the class domination and that the uneven development of capitalism strongly influenced the origin of oppositional nationalism. Another writer, Paul Brass, insists that ethnicity and nationalism are the product of modernity and emphasizes its constructed character. According to him, cultures are fabricated by elite groups who use raw materials from different groups to create ethnic and nations. By using these representations, the elite aim at ensuring their economic or political advantages for themselves. Brass theory states that ethnic identity and modern nationalism arise out of specific type of interaction between the leadership of centralizing states and the elites from non-dominant ethnic groups, especially but not exclusively on the peripheries of those states. Michel Mann sees himself as a modernist, although he accepts the existence of more or less conscious ethnicity and proto-national before modern times. To account for the development of nationalism, it is necessary to refer to all the four sources of social powers, namely economic, political, ideological, and military. In the first phase, which began in the 16th century, ideological power dominated. It was in shape of religion and it gave form to proto-nations like Protestant England. The second phase commenced in 1700 and it can be defined as the commercial static phase. It was characterized by a further diffusion of proto-national identities. It roughly corresponding to Anderson's idea of print capitalism. In the third phase, military power dominated and propelled nationhood. By the beginning of the 19th century, most of the Western nations were already in full sight. Finally, the industrialist phase of the nation encouraged three types of nations: state reinforcing, state creating, and state subverting. According to Mann, nationalism appeared heavily mediated by the role of the state. Industrialization was not the principal cause of nationalism. In fact, it arrives too late. According to Mann, there were two principal causes. On the one hand, the emergence of commercial capitalism and its universal social classes, and on the other, the emerge of modern state and its professional armed forces and administrators. Conjoined by the fiscal military pressure exerted by the geopolitical rivalry, they produced the politics of popular representation, and these formed several varieties of modern nationalism. In short, nationalism is a modern phenomenon, though its rise has been ridden with a complexity of factors. Here we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.